It's actually, if you go sideways, it shows up better too. Okay. So standing is something that is one of the, I like to think of it as one of the 5 basic movements that typical humans do in modern society, right? We sleep, we sit, we stand, we squat, and we walk. So if we're not sitting, we oftentimes find ourselves standing, and in order to do that well, you want to use the facilities that you have that are meant to do that. Now, a lot of times, and this is what we saw last time we were in classes, there's all different kinds of strategies you might adapt for standing up. Even right now, the ones who are standing have a different strategy for how you're doing that. One of the typical ones when your body starts to get tired is you'll lock the knees out and kind of push the hips forward and rest like this. And the reason that that's tempting to do is because you don't really have to do a lot of work. You're just leveraging against your, what we call passive structures, like ligaments and connective tissues and just the integrity of your joints. Okay, there's definitely a couple of you that were doing that and in different areas of the body. And then, you know, once this gets a little bit uncomfortable because you've been putting pressure on your back, you might find yourself leaning over to one side and then putting a little bit of pressure out through this hip, right? And then maybe the other side, and then you're kind of looking for something to lean on. You come over to the wall and you're like raising your hand, Jetty, are you gonna keep me standing anymore? So what we want to look at is, okay, what are some of the basic things that will help you to stand better, you know, and knowing that if you're not used to standing for an hour and 15 minutes, that's going to be challenging, okay? So whatever your body adapts to whatever you're asking of it. So if you're the most you ever stand is for 10 or 15 minutes, then that's probably your limit unless you practice more, okay? So let's just go over basic principles of this. And this kind of goes into the beginning stance for the squat. This is how I teach people to stand because I think it's the simplest way to describe it. So just as with the squat, I want to get my feet parallel and directly underneath my hips. Okay, just on the basic principles of physics, if I go wider, that puts a little bit of an unnatural angle on my hips. Okay, so getting the feet parallel and directly underneath the hips, it's a very simple, general way to get into a good neutral position, okay, and trying to distribute the weight evenly from one leg to the other, all right? Another common thing that we see is the knees wanting to come in towards each other. And you can see that if the knees come in towards each other, my back starts to drift this way, all right? We don't want that to happen. So starting from the ground up, getting the feet parallel, planted into the floor. Try to push the knees out a little bit. The cue we gave last time was screwing your feet into the floor. And then coming up to the knees, you want to make sure they're a little bit soft. Because if you're soft in the knees, then all of a sudden your muscles have to come on. And that gives your joints and your ligaments a little bit of rest. Okay? It's very easy to just kind of snap the knees out, and then all of a sudden you're just hanging out on your joints, and the bones are resting on top of each other. All right? You may not feel pain now, but that accumulates over time. So we've got the feet planted well, we've got the knees that are soft, and feet are screwed into the ground. So then the hips, by now you might already start feeling stuff happen around here just by nature of what you adjusted below. Okay, so when Phil and I were talking about this, we're like, what's the simplest instructions we can give people to help them feel better in standing? Why don't we get everybody to stand up here so we can all try this too as we're doing it. So go ahead and get your, whatever feels comfortable, shoes on, shoes off. And you're gonna get your feet parallel directly underneath you. Good. And try to do that, screw your feet into the ground or turn your knees out to the sides a little bit to the degree that you can. It shouldn't be painful or uncomfortable. Good. Okay, so now are you guys feeling that there's a little bit more action happening in this kind of stance? It's more of an active position. Okay, so from this spot with the knees soft and a little bit bent, I want you just to squeeze your butt together. Okay, just like you're tensing up those cheeks a little bit. Right? And what that does is that pulls us out of this position where the hips are sitting forward. When we squeeze the butt, it helps bring the pelvis back underneath the rib cage. And a little bit of squeezing in the butt is going to put your pelvis in a much more stable position. So are you guys all squeezing back there? You don't have to try to like break something back there, but just enough so that you feel there's a little bit of activity. Okay? So far everyone doing okay? Is there any discomfort there? Okay. So then the last part that we think is important to do is, so you've got everything else going, you're kind of squeezing your butt, soften the knees, is to bring a little bit of tension into your belly. Again, not like you're bracing for a kick from Bruce Lee or something, but you're just trying to get the rib cage to come down a little bit. And the combination of doing that with squeezing the butt ought to make you feel a little more stable around your center, around your midsection, okay? So if I'm going from this position, right, kind of hanging out on my ligaments, to something like this, where I'm more stacked on top of myself, closer to neutral, and my muscles are holding me up, then it might take a little bit more effort and concentration, but you shouldn't feel any of that discomfort on your joints, okay? So how does it feel to hold this position? Is it a little more sturdy and stable?
My back hurts.
Your back hurts? Where does your back hurt?
Lower.
Lower, okay. So let's take a look at that. You guys keep holding your position. Let's see here.